Hey homeschool friends, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to a fun video. I feel like it's a topic that isn't talked about all that much here on YouTube. And the question I have is, do you long-term homeschool plan? In other words, do you plan out like 5 years, 10 years? Is that how your brain works? Because I feel like people will tell you, no, don't do that, but I do. I do that. And so in today's video, I'm going to share a bit of my plan, but I'm also going to share some tips and tricks for how to do this and how to do it well. So stay tuned if you are a homeschool mom who does long-term plan, or maybe you are someone who wants to start doing it. So hi, my name is Angie. Welcome to the channel if you're new here, or welcome back if you have been coming for a while. So like I said, in today's video, we are going to be talking about long-term planning. And so before I kind of hop into my tips and what I'm doing, I wanted to mention the fact that I have homeschooled for over 4 years now. I think over 4 years. And I have gone through many changes in that time frame of 4 years. But all of the changes have been intentional and with thought, and we have ended up in a better spot. I would say we are making fewer and fewer changes every year, but being able to be flexible with your homeschool plan is really important, especially as we kind of go into talking about how to plan more long-term. So before I take you through my specific long-term plan for my kids' education, I'm going to chat first about a couple quick tips for doing this. The first one is to use a digital copy. So I just started this, and I have found it to be a much better way to work with these ideas. Now, I am typically a paper and pencil kind of person. I love planning. I love planners. Like, I tend to have that. But my problem is I'll get these kind of brainwaves and I'll start a piece of paper, and then I can't find the paper that I was brainstorming my ideas on, and I kind of lose it. And so what I've done lately is I made an Excel spreadsheet, which I printed off, but I realized it's so small. So I'll probably just pop some of it up on the screen as I'm talking. But what I did is I created a document that has my kids listed here in the columns, and then across the top are all the different grades. And then I put the different subjects that they'll need. And I'll probably add some subjects as we go, like we're nowhere close to like high school electives and things like that. So that's not even on our list. And then I work across. And this is where having an Excel spreadsheet is so very helpful. So that's my first quick tip. My second tip is don't get too far ahead of yourself. But if you do, hold it loosely, because it's fun to plan. It's fun to kind of think things out, think ahead of what you need. And there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you are capable of holding it loosely and being flexible. You just have to know yourself well enough, because I have some friends who, once they have a plan in place, it has to be done. And if they don't do it, then they feel like they failed. In that case, I would caution you on doing a lot of long-term planning. But if you're able to hold it loosely and just use it as kind of more of a brainstorming session, I think that's totally doable, and you can be very successful at planning in that way. All right, and then the last tip is not really a tip. I guess it's more of an observation. It's the fact that I feel like long-term planning is really helpful if you have a family where you combine your kids in a lot of subjects. It just really helps you keep them all straight, or at least that's what I have found, because I do combine my top 2 kiddos, who my son is almost 9 and my daughter is 7.5. And so they're only 16 months apart, and they are combined for a lot of subjects. And so for me, it's helpful to see it in the grid and then be able to see where they are combined on what subjects they're combined. So that's really helpful for me. So those are kind of some quick thoughts and ideas about long-term planning before I just hop into how we do it. How do we do this? I'm trying to figure out how best to share this. What I think I'll do is I'll take my spreadsheet and I'll just kind of copy bits and pieces of it and show it to you. So I gave you the overall picture of how I set it up, with the grades on the top and the kids down the side. And then what I do is I start filling it in. So I have the curriculum for this current year. And then what I'll do is I'll start kind of working my way out. And so for me, this was really helpful in a couple of different subjects. One, your non-skill subjects. So you're talking your history and your science, to kind of to be able to see a bigger scope of where you're heading, when your kiddos will cover different subjects and things like that. In a loose fashion, of course, but I like to be able to see the big picture of that. The other thing I like to see the big picture of is math, honestly. And the reason is because once you get to high school, there are certain classes, especially when you're talking science, and if you have science kiddos, there's certain classes that have math requirements, and you really kind of need to know that Granted, if you're kind of in the elementary years, which we very much are, this doesn't have to be something you spend a lot of time on, but I think it's helpful to see about where you'll land based on where you're currently at. And so I like to do that. I like to kind of run out where the math will be based on where the science will be, because I have science techie kids, but also my son isn't naturally gifted in math. He's on grade level, so he's not behind or anything like that, but I wouldn't say it's an easy subject for him. So I just kind of wanted to see where he would map out on his math. So that's really helpful. So I think I'm going to focus a bit on my older two kids before I get to my younger ones, because when I'm long-term planning, I'm able to set them up based on what we do with the bigger kids, because I'm a person who likes to reuse a lot of curriculum. I've invested money in a literature-based curriculum that is very much reusable, not consumable. And so the idea is that my younger kids are going to use it. But let me pop up my older two. Here you can see the top two columns are phonics and language, as well as math. So really the skill subjects. I do have some other skill subjects like handwriting and spelling and vocab kind of down a little bit lower as well. But you can see I'm tracking those about where they're at. And that helps me when I'm looking at things, especially things like Sonlight, our history, Bible, literature, science. And so when I look at both my students here, you can see our current year is the one that's highlighted in the light gray here. For my daughter is second grade and my son is third grade. And you can see here we are doing Sonlight HBLB and Science B for both of them. And so what I like is it's kind of staggered there, so I can see what we overlap on, and then I can also be monitoring their skills, because especially for Sonlight, it matters when we transition into Sonlight HBLD. The reason it matters is because at the level D, that is when the kids' readers will match up with the history that they are reading. So what they are reading to themselves is what we are reading in history. And then the readers also match up with the language arts for Sonlight, which we are using and we are loving. And so certain things matter here. And so I want both my kids to be at the language arts D by the time we're doing HBLD. And for Sonlight and a lot of literature-based programs, there's a wide age range. We're not talking like grade 3 is grade 3. I think HBLD runs from like age 9 to age 12 or something like that. So it can encompass a lot of kiddos. And that's another thing I'm watching for, is to make sure that my daughter is within the correct range, because I want to keep them together. And then you'll see as I march through what we're planning on doing kind of more long-term as we get into middle school and high school, how that kind of works out with the two of them staying combined or maybe not staying combined. And so I have kind of that idea where I want to get them both to language arts D come my son's 5th grade year and my daughter's 4th grade year, because that lines up with their age ranges. Then I'll be able to use the same Sonlight language arts as well as the same history, Bible, literature, which is really cool. I love that idea. And I'm also kind of watching a lot of videos and trying to learn how to do that a little differently, because I'll have to tailor it a bit differently to my daughter than my son. But you can see in my long-term planning, I've worked it out to get us there, because in these earlier years, when you're talking like kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, we are focused a lot on phonics, learning to read, really starting to love reading. And so that's the most important part. And where we are in our Sonlight language arts is a little less important to me. I'm still working through some of the creative expression ideas, the copy work that is very age appropriate. And I just know that, especially with the creative expression or the early composition, a lot of those prompts or types of writing will circle back through every year. They will just get to experience it at a deeper level, or have to write like 3 paragraphs instead of 1 paragraph sort of idea. So it gets tailored, but I have really been impressed with the Sonlight language arts on that. And so this long-term plan actually matters, because you can see for my daughter in 2nd and 3rd grade, if we wanted to get her to 4th grade language arts D, then I have to get her at least through language arts 3, just based on how Sonlight's set up. And I might do more videos on Sonlight language arts to explain how it works, because I think it's really good and I've really appreciated it, but they need to get through level 3 before they can jump to language arts D. And so I have her overlapping in 2nd and 3rd grade. Like 2nd grade, I have language arts 1 and 2. 3rd grade, I have language arts 2 and 3. And that will be so that she can get what she needs to be ready for language arts D. I hope that makes sense. That doesn't mean I'm having her do double the work. That means I'm kind of picking and choosing through all of that stuff to gradually move her to where she needs to be. Okay, So now to hop up a bit to my preschoolers. So what have I learned from planning with my big kids that I am bringing to my twins? One, we're keeping with Abeka phonics from the beginning. It's already working well for them. It's worked for both my big kids. I really do like Abeka phonics. So we're keeping that. Saxon worked for my oldest, and we have all the materials. So I'm hoping Saxon works for my younger kids as well. And so I've kind of mapped out their math and their language. And then also I'm looking at their Sonlight. And basically what I have learned through using Sonlight with my bigger kids is I want to move around some of the levels. Like I want to do level A before K because I want to try to do level K when my twins are like 7 going on 8, because that was the best year for my oldest son. He really understood the American history that year, which was last year, and it was a good fit for his age. And so I'm just going to shift some stuff around. And so I have it lined out here. And I feel like I'm trying to take what I've learned from teaching my oldest son and use that information for the twin boys, because I feel like they will probably be fairly similar. And so instead of trying to push my twins faster, because I could, we've started earlier with Sonlight with them, I'm deciding to take it easy, to go slower, to wait for them to be a little bit older, because the older they are, the better they comprehend. But I don't want them to be so old that they're going to miss out on some of the other good programs because we're going too slow, because we don't have to. We have the flexibility to pick it up when we need to. And so I like the fact that I can use kind of what I've learned from my son down here at the bottom and use it towards my twins, and then plan out which level of Sonlight I'm going to use for which grade roughly. So that is how I'm using it for my twins. And then the next big question I have in my head for my big kids is like, okay, I am combining them. How long can I combine them? When is the appropriate time to let them start either working by themselves, or is there an appropriate time? Is the fact that they're 16 months apart and they can work as a team, or they can have really good discussions about what they read, especially as we get later and later into the topics and things get like harder and it's better to have discussions? Is it better to keep them together? I'd say yes. So I've kind of got two different schedules here, so I'll try and zoom into some of the later years for planning Sonlight. And again, this is where I hold it so very loosely. Things might change. They might not be interested in like the history of science, and we might do the history of the early church. Whatever it is, like there is flexibility here. But as for right now, these are the things I really am looking forward to and want to do with my kids. And so if you start to look down the road where my daughter's in 5th grade and my son is in 6th grade, they're still together. That's HBLE. And then the next year is HBLF, which the history is the Eastern Hemisphere, which I think is a very unique program, and I really want them to get that. And then the year after that is where I'm trying to decide if I want to keep them together, because in Sonlight they do a whole nother set of world history years, which we could do. My son is a little bit on the higher end of the age range, so at this point he could also skip the world history and go straight to Sonlight J, which is the history of science, which as a scientist I really love and I feel like my kids would love, but maybe they won't. But I have it there. But the problem with the fact that we're skipping a couple levels is then my daughter potentially falls off the bottom of the age range if she stays with her brother. And so this is a natural place where I could split them. I could have him go on with J, and she could do a condensed year of world history and do J the following year. And then she'd be like a year behind her brother. Like he would do like HBL 100, which is the first year of high school. And then the next year she would do that same set of books. Now, I feel like I could do that, and it really depends on them, honestly. If they work well together and they prefer to stay together, I think I would prefer just to push my daughter a little bit up and let them stay together versus having them be just separated by 1 year. But then again, they might really dislike working together and want the independence. So I'm kind of planning for both of those scenarios. And again, this isn't something that's going to affect our lives strongly for a number of years. I like to see if I lay it out this way, what will that allow them to take in high school? Or if we do it slow here, that means that they can only take 2 years of a high school core, which I don't really like that because I think their high school cores are just so cool. So does that make sense why I long-term plan? Okay, so I hope you don't think I am just like a crazy person with all of this like forward-thinking planning. I think it can be really good. And I think, at least for my personality, I like to see how things fall out. I like to see, okay, I'm making this decision to start here. in this curriculum. What does that mean down the road? Does that mean that I'm going to not be able to get to a number of things? Because I don't want that to be the case. Or if that's the case, I just need to accept it, or maybe there's a different curriculum we need. You know what I mean? I feel like long-term planning opens my eyes to that idea. It doesn't mean that I'm pigeonholing myself into it. It just means that I have an awareness of kind of where I'm headed. As I'm just kind of focusing on my day and getting each lesson done, it does matter where we're going in the end. And it could end up in a couple different places, but I like to see it and I get excited about it. But it also helps me feel more confident and secure in my decisions. I think maybe that's really where it comes down to with long-term planning. For me, I think it's fun. I enjoy it. But I also feel like it gains me some confidence that like, okay, we're on the right path. This is going to get us to where we want to go when focusing on this today. And I hope that makes sense. And I hope this was a useful video. I know a lot of you don't use Sonlight for your main curriculum, but I feel like the same thing applies. Like you could take the Beautiful Feet program or the Build Your Library program or the Good and the Beautiful program. There are really so many options as to how you can long-term plan and see how a curriculum will end up as you go, that I think this is useful. So anyway, let me know down below, do you long-term homeschool plan? Or do you find it to be stressful and you want nothing to do with it? Let me know all of that down below. And otherwise, guys, I hope this was fun and entertaining for you. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing if you want to. And otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next homeschool video. All right, take care.